But anyway, so I was asked by some of Dr. McDonald's friends to investigate the case. And I told Dr. McDonald, I said, if you're guilty, as soon as I find out you're guilty, I'm not going to investigate any further. If you're innocent, I'll go right to the mat with you. Now, the gentleman had just been convicted in August 1979 of these 3 murders, even though the murders had been committed some 9 years prior to this. There were a number of appeals, and he was not indicted by the grand jury until 1974, so that was the reason for the delay. So I entered the case, and I noticed in reviewing the case, going through records, and I spent hours reading all kinds of material, the court dockets and testimony, etc. I noticed that skin that was in Colette's fingernails was turned over to William F. Ivory, who was the chief investigator for the Army, and it disappeared. Dr. McDonald did not have a scratch mark on him. The skin obviously was from one of the assailants, Colette being the wife. From skin, you can tell what type of blood the person is who was scratched, right? That just plain disappeared off the earth. Also, in reviewing the records, I noted that there were 14 candle wax drippings in the house. And remember now, Colette had light flickering across her face. And these candle wax drippings, including one that was in the child's bed sheet, were foreign to any other candles and candle wax found in the house. I also noted that an FBI agent, hairs and fibers expert named Paul Stombaugh, lied to the grand jury, and if you want documentation on that, you can read the book Fatal Vision by McGinnis. And in there, it states that he testified before the grand jury and said that the hair in Colette's right hand was Colette's hair. Well, what happened was they found that Colette had hair in her hand. They tested it against Dr. McDonald's. It did not match, so it had to come from someplace, so they said it was Colette's. You cannot say that hair is identical. You can say it's similar. You can say it's cut, pulled, peroxide, what part of the body it came from, and it's similar. I noticed also that according to Helena Stokely, I obtained a confession from her on October 25, 1980. I brought her back to LA. That's a story by and of itself. And Helena Stokely told me that it was her satanic cult group that went into the house that night. And it was her initiation into the group. And I said, what is this all about? And that was really the first I learned about Satanism. But Helena told me that to prove that she was in the house, that she had attempted to ride the rocking horse in the child's bedroom. The spring was broken. She wouldn't have known about that otherwise. She told me that, that there was a jewelry box. I asked her specifically, was there anything, arrangement of the furniture, draw the diagrams of the house and so forth? She did that. I asked her about a jewelry box on the master bedroom dresser. She said there was a jewelry box there. I had her describe it. And she described it. I went down, got a Sears and Roebuck catalog. I showed her the catalog. She picked out the box. It was identical with it. She talked about also that there was something unusual happened that night. She said that right in the middle of all this commotion and this fighting, that the phone rang. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, I answered the phone, and there was a man asked for Dr. McDonald. And I said, well, then what happened after that? And she said, well, Dwight Smith, who was the person she identified as also being there were some 7 individuals involved in the crime, said, hang up the GD phone. And so she hung up the phone. Well, later on, I found out through my investigative effort that the person who made that call was a fellow named James Fryer, and he was in the penitentiary in western North Carolina, out of Asheville, North Carolina. And I called the warden. I made arrangements to go out and interview him on a Saturday morning. Well, when I arrived out there that morning, can you guess what happened? He had escaped the night before. And in developing additional information on the case, I learned that one of the early prosecutors, Jim Proctor, was the judge's ex-son-in-law. He was divorced from his wife, but still the judge was a grandfather to the children. And I learned that the police intelligence files on this group of Satanists that Helena described by name gave me descriptions of exactly where each one of them went in the house, what happened, step by step. Intelligence files disappeared out of the Fayetteville Police Department files, and also out of Waycross, Georgia, because one of them had been arrested down there. I learned subsequently that there were 2 black fibers on Colette's tongue in her mouth. There was a black fiber on the 32-inch bed slat, and there was a black fiber wool on her chest, black wool, okay? Determined it was black wool. The FBI had in their notes, their handwritten notes, that it was black wool and a question mark as to where it came from. When the report was filed, typed up, the formal report was typed up and filed and furnished to the defense, that information was left out. Now, in conducting my investigation, I learned that the only black wool in the house that night was Helena Stokely's skirt. She had on a black wool skirt. I also learned that as a result of my confession, and later on there were some other confessions, a girl named Kathy Perry confessed to the FBI, but she said that she was high on drugs, and there were two children, they were boys that were killed that night, so the FBI discounted it. There's another individual, Greg Mitchell, who was one of the assailants named by Helena Stokely, who confessed to the neighbors that he was involved in the murders. But to this day, to this very day, that man is still in jail, in spite of this overwhelming evidence that he's innocent. Now, to confirm and document that it was a satanic cult murder, there were several signs that were left behind. This is always usually the case. They always leave signs behind. There were unexplained bird feathers in the house. There was a headless doll, and the 2.5-year-old child had shallow ice pick, 10 shallow ice pick wounds in her chest in the form of an S. I asked Helena, I said, Helena, what did that S stand for? And she said, Satanism. So this was a shock to me. The McDonald case, this man's in jail. I couldn't understand it. I went on national television, a number of national TV shows. I debated Freddie Kassab, the father-in-law, on CNN, and also a psychiatrist was there. And I talked about this satanic aspect. And I had people calling me from all over the country, telling me the same basic story, from the East Coast, the West Coast, North and South. And I had people that, what you'd call them multi-generation Satanists. That's somebody who was born into it, mother, father, grandfather, grandmother are involved in Satanism. And adult survivors, that's somebody that gets out, usually has to go into hiding to survive. I had these people calling me from all over the country, telling me about the ceremonies and about the extent of the satanic movement in this country today. So I started investigating it myself. I gave a number of lectures on it. I had some national exposure, of course. And the bottom line is it's very easily explained, and it fits into a pattern. And this goes back some 200 years. I'm going to use as a textbook tonight Pawns in the Game. It's a book that was written by William Guy Carr. He was a retired commander in the Canadian Naval Force. And he had heard about the conspiracy and wanted to delve into it himself. He wrote a very compact book about what's going on with the Illuminati and how this fits into modern day plans, what's going on in the world today. So we're going to use that as a textbook for the first 2 hours, and the second 2 hours we'll have some case studies. So let's start out by stating and by showing you. We'll start with this page in the prefix. And you see this, we'll start up here. In 1784, an act of God placed the Bavarian government in possession of evidence which proved the existence of the continuing Luciferian conspiracy. This explains the previous 9 pages, goes into it in detail. We don't have time to do it completely. Conspiracy. Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit-plain professor of canon law, defected from Christianity and embraced the Luciferian ideology while teaching at Ingolstadt University. In 1770, the money lenders who had recently organized the House of Rothschild retained him to revise and modernize the age-old protocols designed to give the Synagogue of Satan ultimate world domination so they can impose the Luciferian ideology upon what remains of the human race after the final social cataclysm by use of satanic despotism. Weishaupt completed his task on May the 1st, 1776. It's a communist holiday, isn't it? May 1, 1776. The plan required the destruction of all existing governments and religions. This objective was to be reached by dividing the masses whom he termed goyams, meaning human cattle, into opposing camps.